Hey guys, and welcome to the inaugural episode of Max Minty. Today we're going to be covering a modern take on an Italian classic, meatballs in red sauce. This past summer, I had the pleasure of dining at Carbone restaurant in Manhattan. I'm fortunate enough to have friends type A enough to wake up months in advance to refresh the reservations page until I secured a time. Now everything was really solid at this upscale red sauce joint, starting with their classic burrata, presented with salami, spicy rigatoni al dente with a beautiful chew, to the veal parm presented with a rib. But the standout for me was their simple yet elevated meatballs in red sauce. Now the spheres of meat in question were well seasoned and had this beautiful heterogeneous texture that I thought was provided by minced morsels of coarsely ground yet tender steak. I've since learned that Carbone likes to freak it, and the texture actually comes from milk-soaked pieces of stale bread. With that said, let's make my Italian grandmother proud and start with the sauce.
Vinny, don't put too many onions in the sauce.
Italian households are required by law to have a pot of red sauce on hand at all times in case of emergency. Let's start with the aromatics by finely dicing a shallot. Once that's chopped, we'll add it to our big bowl and pick up any stragglers. We'll then peel half a head of garlic using the knife smash technique. And then we'll grab our trusty dusty garlic press and press a little more than half of our garlic into the bowl with the rest of the shallot there. At this time, I'm pleased to present to you the world's ugliest white onion, courtesy of Whole Foods Los Angeles. Next, we'll try our very best not to pierce our thumb while navigating Chef Jean Pierre's onion processing technique. Pause to admire the grates and remove the outer layer of our onion along with any stubborn paper. Split our onion in half and exploit its anatomy for a perfect dice. Once our onion is finely diced, we'll head over to the stove. Add our garlic and shallot to some olive oil along with our diced onion. Once that's in there, we're gonna go ahead and give it a bit of a shake-a and inspect our fine chopping work. Recover grandma's weapon of choice. We'll stir over medium-high heat to reduce this. Don't worry about the garlic. It will not burn because of the moisture from the onions. Add a hefty tablespoon of salt, black pepper to taste, and go ahead and continue to reduce that over medium-high heat as it starts to develop flavor and the onion soften. Next, we're going to disappoint our Italian grandmother by going for the world's finest and throw smoke at Carbone with the other Italian restaurant that is difficult to get into in New York. Once our aromatics are sufficiently waterboarded in tomato sauce, we can go ahead and add 2 tablespoons of garlic powder, a tablespoon and a half of red chili flakes, and some fresh basil. Then we'll reduce heat and stir continuously for 15 minutes while it simmers down. At this point in the program, we're going to turn our attention to freshly grated Parmesan Reggiano, only the finest.
More. More.
More?
More.
More?
More.
Right, once we've grated a metric ton of Parmesan cheese, we're going to turn our attention to the bread. In this case, we have fresh bread which we're cutting up into 1-inch cubes, placing into a baking tray, and tossing in the oven at 350 degrees for 20 minutes to stale them up. Otherwise, just use stale bread if you've got it around. To quote the late and great philosopher Sigmund Freud, whose words I always try and live my life by, sometimes a meatball is just a meatball. For this recipe, we're going to be using hot Italian sausage. We got 3 here, which ended up being about a pound of hot Italian sausage. We're going to split the cases open and get the ground sausage inside into a large bowl. Don't skimp on the bowl, you'll regret it later. Now we're making a double recipe here, so feel free to half this for a much more reasonable serving size. We're then going to try in vain with our hazardously dull knife to open our 1 pound package of ground veal, or in my case, ground lamb, because Whole Foods Los Angeles did not carry any. Once we get that pound open, half pound for normal recipe, we're gonna go ahead and turn our attention to our beef. I'm using 2 pounds of 15% beef here. 1 pound should be sufficient for family of 4 normal recipe. In our bowl here, you can see our ground hot Italian sausage, our beef, and our veal. Before turning our attention to the rest of the ingredients, we're gonna pull our stale bread, or in our case, fresh bread, which is now stale, from the oven and soak it in milk. I'm using 1% because I think I'm fat. Now I'm going to realize that this baking tray is not the optimal place for these, and find a medium-sized bowl to soak these in. I'm going to do some preemptive cleanup here because I'm a people pleaser. I need to make sure my future self loves me. And make sure that my bread is sufficiently covered in milk. I think I realized I needed a little bit more here, so I just topped it off. Next, we're going to grate 1 clove of garlic into our meat, along with 1 tablespoon of secret weapon number 1, chicken bouillon powder, along with a tablespoon each of garlic powder, red chili flakes, oregano, and salt. Go ahead and toss that in there. Add black pepper. Now we're going to add 2/3 of our freshly grated Parmesan Reggiano, or in my case 3/4, along with the rest of our half onion and shallot, the smaller piece of it. Secret weapon number 2 is going to be some Grey Poupon, and secret number 3 is going to be a splash of Worcestershire sauce. Okay, maybe 2 splashes. Along with 1 cracked egg and 1 egg yolk. Lastly, we're going to toss some fresh basil into there. After 15 to 20 minutes of soaking, we're going to take our moistened bread cubes, squeeze any excess milk out of them, and throw them into our meat mixture along with our seasonings. Then, we're going to toss our meat, not squeeze, just start to toss it at first, very gently. And as the ingredients get more incorporated, you can start to mix and add a little bit of pressure. Do not overmix. That's one of the aspects which makes these meatballs so special. Next, we're going to taste our raw meat recipe. How do we do this? By frying a small portion of our mixture in shallow oil. I used olive. Next, we're going to be precise and form small balls of meat for cooking with our mixture. I'm going for about 100 grams each here, maybe a little bit more, but feel free just to eye these. Be careful not to use too much pressure in forming the balls, because part of what was delightful about the meatballs at Carbone were their rustic texture. Next, we're going to place our balls in a 375-degree oven for about 15 to 16 minutes, or until they reach an internal temperature of 145 degrees. If that sounds low, don't worry. The next trick up our sleeve is reverse searing these. The next step is to drop these bad boys into an oil of your choice. I'm using peanut oil for its neutrality and olive oil for a little bit of flavor. Once I get a satisfying exterior texture or an internal temperature of 155 degrees, I'm going to remove half of our oil and drown these in our delicious sauce. Garnish them with Parmesan and throw them under the high broiler for 2 to 3 minutes until that Parmesan is gooey and melted, and I don't know where it ends and the sauce begins. Time to plate. I'm going to garnish these one last time with some freshly grated Parmesan, some basil, and I'm forgetting a little bit of Parmesan here. First bite here, cutting into these, it's just unbelievably tender. Definitely gonna need to go for another bite here. One bite, everybody knows the rules. In sum, these meatballs were absolutely delicious, and I think we really nailed them today. I really appreciate you joining me for my first video, and please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, as it really helps me out as I find my voice on here. Happy New Year, everybody.